today's virtual town hall. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Paul Markle, our new interim executive director, to say a few words. Paul?
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to take any time at all. People are beginning to know who I am if they didn't before, so I'm going to leave this to our honored guests. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and let's get on with it.
Great, thanks, Paul. Okay, so over the past few months, every level of government has come together as Team Canada to ensure that Canadian families and businesses are supported through the economic implications of COVID-19. They're continuing to seek more feedback on the support already provided and are now implementing the plans for a recovery phase as we start to reopen businesses. They recognize that every sector and every community will have unique needs and that they want to hear from businesses now to ensure that we can come together through this. The situation continues to evolve, and this type of two-way communication is critical to successfully recovering our economy. I will introduce each of our panelists shortly, then ask them to provide a brief update for you from their level of government, after which we'll proceed directly to the Q&A session. We encourage you to submit your questions as well, but we have also taken some questions ahead of time. To submit a question, please click on the Q&A and submit it to me, and I will read it out to our panelists. And with that, I'll start with Andrea, and then I'll work my way backwards. So Andrea Kanjan, our MPP for Barrie Innisfil, was hoping to join us this morning, but she is on the Finance Committee, which is studying the post-COVID-19 jobs and recovery efforts that are needed here in the province of Ontario. They're meeting right now at the exact same time as us as well. She told us that she would love to know from Barrie Chamber members their opinion on the regional reopening. Please email your thoughts too, and you'll be able to get all this information off the Chamber site later, but it's andrea.kanjan@pc.ola.org. She also asked us to remind remind everybody that she's doing local job and recovery Zoom meetings every week, and she encourages you to join that. You'll find that information on our website also. They're taking your input very seriously and actually had an unannounced appearance the other day on one of our Zoom meetings from both the Premier and Minister Phillips, which was great. I also believe MPP Doug Downey's office is gathering information for the recovery, and I'm sure Doug will tell us more about this when we get to Doug. So we'll start off with Deputy Mayor Barrie Ward. But Barrie, just before you get started, I'd like to commend the city on the innovative Patios Everywhere program. It looks like it would be really great for our community. And just leading into that, Barrie, if there's any comments you want to make during your little rollout here, fire away. You're muted. You got unmute, Barrie. There we go.
Very much. Delighted to join you today and filling in for Mayor Lehman, who's at a mayor's meeting. So as you're unfortunately, I've tuned in some of the past, and Mayor Lehman talks off the top of his head for 20 minutes, and I do not blessed with that ability, so I'm going to read a lot of this. As you're probably aware, the city is working on an economic recovery plan. Last month, Invest Barrie, along with key business stakeholder organizations, completed a 13-sector consultation totaling about 100 businesses. In addition, through the Mayor's office, Invest Barrie completed an additional 2 consultation sessions and several one-on-one discussions. Building Barrie hosted a public online platform for members of the public to share their ideas. The consultation guide was also turned into an online platform to allow businesses to share their feedback with Invest Barrie. City staff are now working on a report with recommendations. We expect it on a recovery plan. It's expected to come to council on June 22nd. So I don't know what the plan is going to say, but I can talk about what the consultation found. Some of the key themes, I'm just going to touch on a few of them. And the 3 main action areas the city is looking at are capacity building, confidence building, and capital investment. The first one, capacity building, development approvals, and that was by far the most mentioned thing by the community. We need development approvals. So in addition to, there's a lot of things in the line right now, and there's expected to be hopefully a lot of new projects coming forward that will need development approvals, and there were concerns expressed on how the city can handle those volumes efficiently and expedite the applications and inspections. And I know I talked to Andrea Miller, who's our General Manager of Infrastructure and Growth Management, and she assured me that they've been working all along. They haven't taken a break. There's been cutbacks in many city departments, but building is not one of them. They've been sitting down and inspected. I know I've had a few people call me to say, we can't get inspectors to our site, and I've called her and she looked after, I think, immediately because the people stopped complaining. So I think they've been very receptive to making sure that everything's happening. I've talked to a few of the developers myself, and they were quite pleased with how things were going. They didn't think there was from the city side, they seemed to be quite pleased with how things were handling. And I will note that we as a council have begun holding public meetings online under the Planning Act, which is something that the province has allowed us to do, which we're thankful for because it's allowed us to move forward. We held our first one last Monday. It's like everything else on Zoom, it takes a while to get used to, but I think the public is interested. I know that we have a massive proposal coming up Monday. Very excited about it. This is the Smart Centers proposal for the waterfront, the former Harmony Village Blue Sails property and waterfront. It's 1,900 residential units, 3,300 meters of commercial space, 150 hotel rooms, and buildings up to 42 stories high, which is interesting. We'll have to see how that goes. And I know I've talked to the clerk's office, a lot of interest in it. So mainly from the people who live in the condos right beside it. So it'll be interesting to see how that's handled. I think there've been 10 people lined up already to speak to it on Monday. So we'll have to see how that goes. But anyways, we're really delighted that we're able to keep the approval process going. I know there's other public meetings coming up as well for various development proposals around the city. One of the things that was mentioned as well in the consultation with labor, there was a real fear among people that the current stimulus that's out there is discouraging people from looking for work. There might be a shortage of workers because of the people that are, giving the money basically not to work. So there's wondering how the city can somehow support that, getting people back in the labor force. New ideas, we're always looking for business opportunities arising from the COVID-19. I mean, if there's a silver lining, it might be that there are new business opportunities. I know many local businesses have been taking part in those already. So looking at ways that the city can support those. Digital infrastructure, I understand it's a problem still in parts of the city. Wi-Fi and connectivity capacity are available in most places. There's some gaps in the downtown and the south end employment areas, which we hope to correct, hope to encourage the correction. The importance of the downtown was mentioned several times. The fact that the arts community has been virtually shut down during COVID-19. There's nothing happening in the arts community. And so there's somehow we can support a return to the live performances and encouraging the arts to get going again. And we've done our bit. We've actually kept our grants this year, even though the arts community shut down. We decided to maintain the grants that we give to the various arts communities because they needed them more than ever because they've completely their fundraising abilities completely dried up. There was a strong desire to support local businesses and champion local businesses, express an interest to better understand who is here and what they offer. The second theme was confidence building. The overall view from many consultations that the city has a key role in championing consumer confidence and celebrating and promoting local businesses through marketing. And the final one was capital investment. And how can the city leverage its capital investments as part of stimulating the recovery and investing locally and ensure local companies are aware of and have opportunities to participate in the municipal procurement opportunities. And I know that one of the recommendations I'm sure will be to figure out how to get more local businesses aware of how they can compete for city jobs or city projects. About a week ago, we received confirmation from the federal government and the province that they have finally given final approval of $7.5 million in federal and provincial funding for the new transit hub at Allendale. So that will be starting. We're really excited about that. We're thankful for the other levels of government for coming through with the money. And staff has assured me that we'll have a list of shovel-ready projects because I do expect there'll be a lot of stimulus funding coming from the other levels of government. And we'll have other projects ready to go. So when that funding becomes available, we'll be able to take part of it. I just want to touch on a few COVID-related concerns. The good news on that is that our daily update yesterday from our CAO Prouse said that our emergency services haven't been affected at all, which is really good. I mean, in terms of people being affected by COVID-19, we've had very good, we had a very low absentee rate in both the fire department and the police department. So that's been good. It's always one of my worries that we were going to be, that was going to spread through either one of those departments and really cripple us. It hasn't. In a report to General Committee going to General Committee on this Monday, staff estimate the cost of the city if the current restrictions continue through until September 1st. And I'm not sure if that might be optimistic, because it sounds like it may go further than that. We expect to be down about $18.6 million in revenue in the city on everything from rental fees on city facilities, bus fares, program registrations, that sort of thing. So we expect to lose $18.6 million. The city has managed to find $18.8 million in savings from cutting back on contracted services, consultants, less fuel and utilities that we're using. But most of all, we've unfortunately saved $10.5 million in reduction in salaries. That's because the city has eliminated more than 500 positions. A lot of those were students. We just didn't hire any students this summer. And much of the city staff is working on a 4-day work week. So we've managed to save 10.5 million in salaries alone. We are starting to hire some people back. I think we maybe cut a bit too much, especially now that the summer's here. And some of the parks, we've been getting complaints. I get a lot of complaints about the amount of litter around the city because the annual cleanup had to be canceled. So, and the grass is getting a little out of hand in some of the parks. So we're hiring some of the parks people back to try to address that. And getting some of the fields ready. I don't think we're going to have organized sports this summer, but people still want to get out maybe in small groups and play on the fields. We want to get some of the fields back in. The bigger worry for the city is the cash flow problem. In terms of taxation, at the end of April, in taxes were up 57% over last year. And that's 15.4 million in unpaid taxes. And more than 10 million of that 15 million in unpaid taxes is from the commercial and industrial sector. I think there's something being said there as to that they're that far behind their taxes, they are taking a serious hit, which makes the importance of the recovery, it makes it even more important that we recover quickly. I mean, we waived late fees for taxes. So a lot of the people may just think, well, I rather have the money in my account. I'll pay them when the tax-free or when the penalty-free phase ends. So it may not be as bad as we think. Our DC reserves have always been in a negative position, and we're a bit worried that if there's a stall in the economy, those are really going to take a hit. We're going to be suddenly all the projects, we're spending a lot of money to prepare for growth. If we don't get that growth, well, we're going to spend the money and not recover it through DC. So that's a worry. The federal government did announce it was forwarding the entire 2020-21 allotment of gas tax money this week, some 17.5 million, but that's not new money. That's just money that was going to be coming to us anyways, but I do appreciate getting it a bit ahead of time, which will help the cash crunch. Other small things, the city's still holding out on giving out any special event permits. We're not handing out special event permits until we get some guidance from the province, so then we can go ahead. As mentioned earlier, we've approved the Patios Everywhere program. So restaurants can approve their patios. Whenever we get the green light that restaurants can start serving again at tables, we've waived all the fees for that, recognizing the challenges that restaurants are facing these days. We've approved the closure of Dunlop Street, but we're leaving it up to the BIA to tell us whether they want Dunlop Street, part that's not under construction, to reopen this summer. I don't know, they're polling their members. We just have to see what happens. Free transit will go until July 2nd. We've taken extra precautions to protect the drivers. And finally, the city has given refunds to all summer programs. Doesn't mean we've canceled the summer programs. We still hope to have some maybe towards the end of the summer, but we didn't want to keep the money for the people. Unlike Air Canada, we didn't want to keep the money. We've decided to give the money back to everybody that's registered. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. So I thought Lehman could be a little long-winded. I think you went past your 2 minutes, Mr.
Oh, no way.
It's okay. We're going to take that time away from Shipley, so we're all good.
Oh,
here.
that's okay then. Oh, I got more here.
Doug won't mind that.
All right. Up next, our MPP from Springwater, Oro-Medonte, also our Attorney General, Mr. Downey. Welcome, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. And the whole riding name has Barrie in it. It's Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte. Just so that the Barrie folks, you have to put Barrie in the front of it. Barrie's a core part of this.
Yeah, I just said it wrong. It's in front of me. It's written right. I just read it wrong.
Yeah. No, it's no, glad to be here again. Happy to looking forward to questions and answer some of that. I just want to highlight a couple of quick things. I am so happy that South Medic received assistance from the provincial government, the Economic Development Group, Minister Fideli's group. They received a $1.8 million grant to help expand. And for those who don't know what South Medic does, they make masks and medical equipment and face shields and a whole bunch of things. They ship all around the world. They're right here in Barrie, and they were expanding, trying to expand to meet the challenges, and they were hitting some roadblocks. So we were able to step in, and that's just huge, quite frankly, and I'm really thrilled about it. And Lee McDonald's doing an awesome job with their company there. I want to touch on the patios. Just I've been talking to the mayor. I talked to John Tory this week, and I've talked to some other big city mayors. Of course, Jeff and I have had conversations about this, and just stay tuned. Is all I'm allowed to say for the moment. But good forward progress on this, and really appreciate the coordination. Barrie's, quite frankly, ahead of the curve a little bit on some of this. You've done all those pieces, so thank you for that. That's good stuff. Similarly, in tourism and our arts community, the grants that were there last year, a lot of those grants are happening for the same reason, to help those those organizations keep their capacity for next year and when we open, so that we can keep moving. So that's some of the stuff that Andrea is doing right now at the Finance Committee, is hearing about how we reopen in the tourism and hospitality and that kind of stuff. So very, very important. You touched on, in a couple of ways as well, the shop local. And I always like to say shop local, but source local. We have some amazing providers here in our area that do things, again, that ship all over the place, all over the world. And if we can get the frontline businesses to source their product locally, and that's everything from agriculture to nuts and bolts, that if we can do that, that would be very helpful. In terms of infrastructure, as some people on the call will know, we have submitted some pieces of infrastructure for money, like the Allendale station, that just finally we've now moved along. So there are some in the queue that we're waiting on, and I know Laurie Scott, the MPP, Minister of Infrastructure, is pushing the feds. We've submitted our stuff. We're waiting on the feds to sign off on some of this. So we need that to flow. But you're absolutely right. Let's keep shovel ready coming. RVH is doing great work. We're continuing to find ways to support them. Some of it's not as public as others, but there's some really good coordination going on, and RVH is doing some remarkable work as well. I want to acknowledge, because this, I'd be shocked if this didn't come up, commercial rents. The commercial rent program, challenging, very challenging. I am hearing of some people who are having success with it, but I'm not downplaying the challenges that are there, and it's a joint program between the levels. So happy to get some feedback on that, and I know my federal counterparts would maybe have some insight on whether anything's going to shift there or not. I do not, beyond where we are at the moment, but I am writing letters for constituents if they want me to write a letter to their landlord to explain what this program is. So if you're in that position, please contact my office. We will write a letter from my office to the landlord and impress upon them the importance of participating in this kind of program where they can. I guess last piece for me is Zoom. So Zoom works great for a number of things. Zoom, we're connecting, and yesterday I did a call, and there were 700 lawyers all over Ontario. And it was a great way to have a dialogue, get the message out, and make sure that people are more or less on the same page. But people are getting zoomed out, and they're getting fatigued, and people are missing that connection. So again, there are supports there, whether they be federal or provincial. If you know somebody, don't hesitate to reach out, somebody that may need the help or somebody that may need some guidance. There are a lot of support services that are open. A lot of mental health services and youth services. So don't hesitate to reach out for that. But I'll stop there and get closer to the questions.
Great, thanks, Doug. 700 lawyers on a Zoom call. I'm sure that must have been something riveting.
I should do the billing. I should do the billing calculation on that.
There you go. Yeah, figure that math out. All righty. Up next, MP Barrie Innisfil, John Brassard.
Thank you, Todd, and thanks again to the Chamber for hosting this morning, and good to see some of my counterparts at all levels of government, and good to see you too, Rocco. I know it's been a busy time for you at the Ontario Chamber, and we had Michelle on. I think Michelle was on last time with us, was she not? Good. So there's been several expansions to the various programs, the emergency business account, the emergency wage subsidy. We've talked about a lot of those. There have been a couple of updates since the last time we were on, so we can get into that a little bit later on if anybody has any questions, because I don't want to take up too much time here. Just a couple of things to acknowledge. The Canada Summer Jobs Program is rolling out much different this year than it has in past years. We're seeing an incremental rollout. So a lot of the, for those employers who've applied for Canada Summer Jobs programs, it's been very difficult in my office to confirm whether that money is available to them if they have applied. I know that we sent our list in about 3 weeks ago, but with the expansion of the program till February, it's caused and having more employers come in and apply, it's really caused some confusion for us with Service Canada. So we have been receiving incremental improvements, and for those that have been approved, we've been reaching out to them. But there have been a couple that haven't been approved that I actually approved as part of the program. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that, but we're working on that right now. So I'm going to ask for some patience on the Canada Summer Jobs Program. I think we've approved just about 700 jobs here in the riding of Barrie Innisfil, and but I do also know as well that there are many employers, and I've been speaking to several of them over the last couple of weeks, who have positions that need to be filled outside of the Canada Summer Jobs Program. So for anybody who is looking for jobs, check out the Canada Jobs Bank, the Youth Jobs Bank, because there are hundreds of jobs, literally hundreds of jobs available in the riding and around Central Ontario. So I was in Ottawa this week, got back last night. First of all, I do want to say thank you to everyone for what was a very peaceful and well-organized protest in downtown Barrie last night. For those that showed up and acted responsibly, I want to say thank you on behalf of the community and thank you for going out and expressing your views on what is a very, very important issue. Last night on my way back from Ottawa, I wasn't driving. My wife was driving, but I had a very interesting conference call, Zoom call with the Canadian Bankers Association. It was terrific. We had some of the top economists from each of the big 6 banks through the association. And just to give you a sense of what some of the numbers were, and this was for our Ontario caucus. In Ontario specifically, there's been 266,000 Canadians that have received mortgage relief. 179,000 Ontarians have received credit card deferral requests. And in Ontario alone, there's been 240,000 plus CEBA loans for small businesses that have been processed through the banks and financial institutions. And just to bring that up across Canada, the CEBA loans are 621,000 across the country. So very interesting outlook from the economists on the state of the economy, where we're going through this COVID-19 crisis and how we're going to come out of it. It was a fascinating conference call, and frankly, it was nice to hear the truth for once. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm looking forward to any questions that anybody might have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Okay, up next, MP, Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, Doug Shipley.
Thanks,
I got
Todd.
that one right.
Yeah, feels like we should also almost have some introductory music as we're going there, getting in there. We're getting so used to these. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and thanks for the Chamber for putting these on. And once again, too, yeah, nice to see you, Rocco. It'd be nice to see some people in person. Or starting to wonder what everybody really looks like. John touched on a lot of the things that I was going to mention. First was the Canada Jobs Program. It has been slow, painful this year, actually. And I know from discussing it with people who applied in other years, we are definitely going to ask them. John summed it up by saying being a little bit patient. We don't know yet who's all getting the jobs. And I know it's getting into season where they need to know. Some companies have been notified. As John said, some have been notified they're not getting them, that we didn't even know weren't getting them, that we had said should get some. So that is a bit of a troubling program this year, but we'll try and get that worked out. But John did touch on that. I did want to touch on the commercial rent assistance program. One disheartening, not one, actually a couple of disheartening facts that have come up. And Doug, I don't think you and I have even spoke about this, but I've had a couple calls in the last couple of weeks from some local business owners who are trying to negotiate this program with their landlords. And there are some landlords who are using this as almost a bit of a bargaining chip and are asking for, and I see Paul nodding his head a little bit, so they may know what I'm talking about a bit. Some landlords, unfortunately, are using this as an opportunity to try and lengthen their lease terms and are using it saying, we won't enter this program unless you give us an extra 1, 2, or 3 years. That's very disheartening. These are tough times for everybody. So not a lot we can do about that situation. Maybe Doug can touch on that from his standpoint. But if you do have that issue, at least reach out to our office, maybe reach out to the Chamber, reach out to Mr. Downey's office. we will try and help. I have tried to help with a couple of those instances, but that's been a little disheartening to see that going on. Just really a tough time for a lot of people to start with. Then some people are aren't sure whether the business is going to be around in 6 months or a year. So they're a little nervous about signing up lease extensions right now. So that's been a little disheartening, but we'll try and work through that. And again, I'm going to keep this short because Barrie took all our time, and John did touch on most of the topics. But I did just want to mention, because I mentioned this last week in my Oro chamber meeting, and I'll give him credit this morning, John Brassard, it was his idea. So John, I'm going to mention it again, but we are starting to do promotional videos for companies that are restarting, or for companies who have a good news story on working. We've been doing these, we're calling them Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte Community Moments, very short, maybe a minute or two. But we did mention last week at Oro, we had some companies reach out and want to get those done. And it was John's idea, but it has worked very well. So we're trying to promote, Todd mentioned at the beginning, and I know Doug mentioned about shopping local, supporting local. If anybody's watching this right now who has a good news story and wants me to come out and do a very short informal interview, we try to make them fun. And quite frankly, we did one on the Barrie Drive-In this week, which has had over 13,000 views. So, which is very exciting. And I do need to mention, because it's the first time I just got a Twitter as we're sitting here, disappointingly, they were scheduled to open tonight, but I see they've had a little bit of a glitch. So they are not opening tonight. I know there's gonna be many, many disappointed people in that, but getting back to the video, that did work well. So if local companies need a little bit of free promotion, we're willing to help some local companies get their name out there with good news stories. So as I said, I'll leave it for that right now. I do see some questions are coming up. Nice to see everyone again. The nice thing is, I guess, just to leave it off with, we've been doing these now for a few months, which seems like it's forever, but seems like it's yesterday. And I think things are a different tone today, at least. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of businesses reopening. I know the province wants to get more business open. They want to keep everybody's health and safety in mind. But I know there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll get there, folks. I'm seeing a different tone, and at least hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll get back to some resemblance of some normal business. So thank you, and I'll leave this for Todd.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for the update. Up next, from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, Rocco Rossi. Morning, Rocco.
Good morning, Todd. Pleasure, and thanks to the Chamber and to all of these august panelists. I really appreciated John's comments about the protests. They underscore that we're actually living with two viruses, one that predated COVID and sadly will last beyond it, where we simply have to do better, and each of us commit to that. So thank you for raising that point. John, I'm also wearing, because it's Italian Heritage Month, and I have to show the flag. So
Francesco did a statement in the house the other day. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But just quickly, so we can get to the questions, I'd like to put it into three buckets, which is the way we at the OCC are looking at these issues, and that is survival, revival, and thriving. And on the survival part, Barrie, I hope that you're right, and it's simply people waiting for the penalty period to arise before they pay. Unfortunately, what we've been hearing from too many, because so many small and medium-sized businesses went into the crisis with only 20 to 30 days of cash on hand, they burned through that, and they have been spending the money that has been deferred just to keep afloat. And the problem will be that at the end, when people come for that, and it's something that we raised with Minister Phillips, and why we were glad that he put lots of contingencies into the economic statement, is our fear is a number of those deferrals will have to be and will likely be written off, either forced because the companies simply pack up at the end of it, or because we want to keep those companies going for the revival and the thrival at the end, that they're going to need it. So that is a massive concern I have the longer this goes, and particularly, and rightfully so, the reopening having to be gradual. The other point on the survival side, and it's been raised a couple of times now, is the rental subsidy. We said from before the application process opened that we thought the process was flawed, not because CMHC are bad guys, just because it is an unfair burden to essentially have landlords be the administrators of this program. And that's what has happened in what I would see as really the only significant case of what otherwise has been a hugely collaborative effort by all levels of government. And I have to say in this one, there's a little bit of an after you, Alphonse, between the feds and the province really wanting the Fed to use its printing press to deal with the problem in an area that has some provincial jurisdiction. And we really encourage all parties to get back to the table, because this isn't just, yes, there are some bad landlords as there are some bad tenants. By and large, most landlords want to do the right thing, but they're being put in many cases in impossible situations because, they can only apply for someone who has lost 70%. So if they have, and many landlords are small businesses themselves, one tenant that lost 72%, another 68%, too bad, so sad, I can't help you on the 68. They are put into a position where they'd rather not, because they either do the same for all of their tenants, maybe on a sliding scale, rather than this yes, no. They are not like the government that can say, unless you have 30%, you don't get the wage subsidy, and they live with it because they live with their tenants on a regular basis. So it's a huge burden. And we saw week one, only 16,000 applications. And that is not 16,000 landlords. That is 16,000 tenants combined that the landlords who have chosen to participate are participating in. We estimate there's probably about 500,000 businesses across Canada that should be part of this, who would qualify for it under even the 70%. So we're a long ways away. The Atlantic provinces and BC have issued, and this is something we hated to even be part of, but we felt it was important to have a cooling off period, to have a temporary moratorium on commercial eviction. BC has announced it, the Atlantic provinces have. I know that the Premier has exhibited, attempts at moral suasion and talked about consequences for the landlords, but this isn't landlords being bad. It's a system that needs to be fixed and that everyone needs to get to the table on, and we certainly encourage them to continue that dialogue, which I know they've always been open to suggestions. On the revival side, just two things quickly. One is that as small businesses are being asked to, or are given the opportunity to open up, you often find that there are several days between the announcement and them actually being able to get in. For instance, this morning, Minister Fedeli on a number of short-term rental and camping and a few other elements, people taken by surprise on that, and will take them some time. So a little more forewarning where it's possible would be helpful. But what many of the small and medium size are finding is the cost of PPE, even being able to access the PPE, and then the startup costs of doing deep cleaning, restructuring their operations. We saw supermarket chains go to plexiglass, go to as much contactless payment as possible. These are expensive items at the end of the day. And I think one of the biggest things that the feds can do, because they're trying to rethink how to make the wage subsidy program better, because it has been undersubscribed relative to what was anticipated, is before the printing presses blow up, is to take some of those funds aside for really what the purpose of the wage subsidy program is, and that is incentive to rehire, the best incentive to rehire is to help people safely and successfully reopen, because then they'll bring their employees back. So a sustainable investment in giving them, help with PPE, restocking, restructuring would be a huge assist. And in the world of thriving, I'm really delighted at the tremendous work Barrie has been doing in preparing that list of shovel-ready projects. And I know that's going to be key. But as we're seeing in the Zoom world, and it was an initiative that the province very strongly worked on, getting broadband everywhere is going to be critical, because the digital divide has been exposed in a way that was talked about before, but we've really been living it through this. And a final upbeat comment, and it's a huge thanks to the Ontario government, Minister McNaughton announcing an extension to the emergency leave, which, as business owners know, if you furlough someone and it goes beyond the 13 weeks, it triggers severance, it triggers a lot of dislocation. That's been extended on a temporary basis during the crisis. That is a huge assist to small businesses who were looking at suddenly having yet another cost that, quite frankly, they couldn't afford to pay. And that would put even more jobs at risk. So I would argue that the government has got it absolutely right, and this is going to help both employees and businesses. Over to you.
Great, thank you, Rocco. Okay, on the first question that's up, I know we've all touched on it here gently this morning, and especially you, Doug Downey, saying that in regards to the rental assistance for your landlord, you said that people could certainly reach out to you if they needed assistance, maybe you reaching out and helping with their landlord or whatever. So we'll go right into the question then. With such a low uptake on the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program from landlords, are there plans to support businesses who can't access rent relief through a non-participating landlord? And that's probably more in towards the federal side, although I know it's being shared.
I'll start though, if I can, Todd. Just so the program for commercial has really just launched, and so the numbers that we have are new, and everything that's been going on through this pandemic is being reviewed on a consistent basis. So as things launch, when this program first came together, it was a federal and then multi-provincial program. So the feds engaged with us on this, and we asked questions like, is it net rent or gross rent? Is it this or is it that? And so the program got changed a couple of times before it was launched. Now that it's launched, if we're not seeing it working properly, I have full confidence that that discussion is going to be happening about, if we're not hitting the mark, what do we need to change? And so I'm not announcing anything. I'm just saying this is the process that's been happening all the way through the pandemic. So, so will there be further supports? I don't have anything necessarily to roll out, but yeah, there's a conversation that will continue to happen. And Rocco was absolutely right about the need to do that.
So the other thing that I would say, Todd, is, and quickly, like many of the other programs that have come out, this one has been really too prescriptive. And like Doug says, there's going to have to be conversations between all stakeholders, provincial, federal, and of course the chamber and their input to find out how this program can work better than it is. And when I say too prescriptive, I look at the emergency wage subsidy, how that was rolled out. There's been significant changes to that. The business account loan, significant changes as well. So if the program's not working, Doug's absolutely right. We got to go back to the drawing board and take the feedback that we hear from our local stakeholders back to the federal government. I know that we've been doing that on our side as an opposition.
Great, thanks guys. Okay, next one, and this is a hit every time. It's in regards to the childcare, because it's such a critical issue right now with everything going on. So question is, childcare is a real concern for businesses reopening. Recalling workers who don't have access to childcare makes opening or reopening much more difficult. And with the anticipated lower capacity in childcare centers, even when a date is announced, there is no certainty that all workers will be able to find childcare. How much notice will be given about reopening childcares? And how will decisions be made with regards to which clients will be authorized?
Well,
Sure
I'll
thing,
tackle that first again. Yeah, it's good. They're good questions. I don't have specific answers for them. I can tell you, I'm having phone calls with people like the YMCA to talk about what they're doing even in their summer programming to see what's happening. I mean, we heard in part of Barrie's report, they're wrestling with what to do at the city. There are still a lot of people wrestling with that piece. I can tell you, for businesses, it's a challenge. It's also a challenge for government. I need to reopen the courts, and we're moving towards a target date for that. And it's people who have children who work in the courts. It's a challenge for the workforce across sectors. So something that obviously we're acutely aware of. People need to have some consistency, and they certainly need some warning. I wish I could give you an answer. I wish I could just say, look, on date X, we're going to make an announcement, and we know that we're going to have a certain level of capacity. In terms of priorities, there's different kinds of childcare, so that's a little trickier to answer. Some places will have held spots for parents from before. Other spaces may be new, and so they of course won't have that. So, but you know what? In terms of getting prepared, connect with where you were getting childcare before, and they have the best handle on what they're likely planning to do in those regards, and if there's constraints on them, either from a senior level of organization, or whether they're free to set their own parameters.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Next question up. Many of our hair salons have real concerns about how they've been falling through the cracks of the funding, and they're worried that they won't be able to last long enough to reopen. We know that there will be a major influx of customers when they are allowed to reopen, but they will have higher costs for PPE and lower capacity because of distancing requirements, so they may not be further ahead. With all the existing requirements in the industry for disinfecting and cleanliness, they believe that they are now ready to open and operate safely. Will there be a second phasing, or will they be in the second phasing of reopening?
So I've been doing calls with different sectors to understand the uniqueness, and whether it be funeral homes, I was dealing with dentists, and having Zoom calls to get an understanding. I have a call next week with hairstylists and barbers to get a full understanding of the constraints and how if they think they're ready. And so I'll get more information there. Of course, it's something everybody's talking about, quite frankly. And so this is one of those issues where once you start to see it everywhere, it starts conversations in places that weren't happening before. They will be busy as soon as they open. There is no question about that.
Sadly, not from me.
Well, I didn't want to presume whether you have to do a little cleanup. I don't know. And my hair is okay with a lot of gel, but you don't want to see the back. It's one of those, right? We're all doing that. But no, in all seriousness, it's a significant piece, and it touches on what we had chatted about before the Zoom call started. Rocco and Todd and I and a few others were chatting about sort of the mental health part of this, and that sort of getting back to normal feeling. And so I firmly believe that hairdressers I'll call them a social center as well as a grooming piece are important. So again, I wish I could give you an outright answer. Don't have one, but it's certainly being talked about, and it's being talked about every day. So it's something, we have a cabinet call tonight, and I suspect it'll come up on that call again.
Doug, as a supplementary on that, can you maybe give some color, because the Premier introduced the notion of looking into regional rollout as opposed to just thinking sector by sector, because as we know, and yes, there's the issue of travel, but we've seen in Quebec, for instance, one set of rules around the Greater Montreal area, and then outside where there have been relatively few cases, thinking about things in a different way. I'm not sure that people will rush to drive to Thunder Bay to have a haircut, but they are in an area with 0 cases.
Thanks for that, because it's a great perspective on it. You'll recall, like, we're taking our cues from the Chief Medical Officer of Health and on the data. And early on, the idea of regional differences was rejected. But as we're seeing the data grow, and like a couple of days ago, we had 0 new cases in Simcoe, Muskoka. And people went, great, that should mean something. And if we're doing regional, then it does mean something. So we are definitely now turned a corner in terms of being willing to look at that. And the Premier's openly speculating about what that might look like. And so that has started a conversation. There's 2 groups. I should flag this, I guess, so that people know. There's an essential business committee, and there's another committee on jobs and recovery. And both of those groups have these conversations about what's possible and when, and then coordinate back with the medical health table. So that's sort of the process. So this regional issues and things like hair cutting are happening at those tables and then being fed back. Sorry, Paul, you had your hand up for this too?
Yeah, just if I've got some specific comments from, salon owners that are contacting me, and sort of it's a sidebar to that. But the other thing that needs to be considered is the number of sort of underground stylists and underground situations that are completely out of control. There's no expectation that they would be following rules. They maybe probably are, but at least if you reopen, in a controlled manner, that's going to eliminate that and I think that's a greater risk than not reopening. People are going to get their hair cut one way or the other. I'm contemplating using my clippers. It's not going to be a good outcome, but I may get to that. And I think you're going to find that people are going to start breaking rules that really there's something we could control. But that's my only comment, and that's just in support of one of our members.
Okay. Next question is actually directed to Doug, Shipley, and John. It's in regards to the CEBA. It says it looks like the banks are not able to put the alternative guidelines in place. And as time goes on, it's getting more difficult for small businesses without payroll. What is the status of the preparedness?
Okay, I can start with that, Doug, if you like. First of all, I want to say I've got the greatest staff in the history of the world because they went out and got me a coffee, which is great. So as far, I was talking to our shadow minister this week, James Cumming, about this because, again, with all of the changes that have gone on with the CEBA, it's been tough for the banks to be up to date because the banks are charged with administering the CEBA. So I know that he spoke to Minister Ng about this, and they are working as hard as they can and as quickly as they can to allow for the new requirements and for the banks to administer that. I don't have a timeline on it, but I know that Minister Ng has told James that they're working as hard as they can on it. So unfortunately, I don't have a timeline, but there will be some administrative changes to reflect the changes to the CEBA.
Yeah, thanks, John. Just further to that, and there are some more details to come out. One of the things I have heard, though, in one of our caucus calls, John, and you were there, that you can probably confirm this, was that one of the biggest stumbling blocks is having to have a business account. Some businesses run just with their own personal account. And we were told that there are some regulatory issues where that may not be able to be changed. So if anybody's out there and they're waiting for that, that may not be one of the regulatory issues that are changed. It's just under the Business Act that they may have to still have that business account to be able to access that. So that is one that may not be adopted or changed going forward. Just thought I'd throw that in to if anybody's waiting for that part.
Okay. Next one up is in regards to the RRRF. It says, I've been told from FedDev, one of the CFDCs, that this is a tool for sole proprietors. This wasn't clear from descriptions. If this is true, what is the availability for small incorporated businesses without payroll?
Well, I guess that's for us. The criteria itself, I mean, there should be information available through FedDev Ontario. I know that $213 million has been allocated to FedDev Ontario to address this issue. So, and as far as I understand, Todd, that incorporated businesses are eligible for it. So I would really be diligent in dealing with the Southwestern Ontario branch of FedDev to see about the eligibility requirements. But there is a significant, there's $250 million that's available for businesses through FedDev Ontario.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, John. The next one, again, I know we've touched on it, but I want to read the question. I want to make a few comments from the chamber perspective first. So it says, can we please explain why a landlord would not go for the subsidy from the government? My landlord is only willing to defer at this point. From a hair salon owner and zero revenue and no date to reopen. Any rationale or helpful links to explain the resistance? I've dealt with many landlords on behalf of the chamber in regards to this. And again, maybe one of you guys can correct me if the rules have changed, but when it was originally laid out, the tenant would only pay 25% of your rent. So the landlord was going to absorb that. Between the federal and provincial government collectively together, they would pay 50% back to the landlord. But the preempt there was also, again, as Doug had mentioned, you as a tenant have to show at least a 70% loss. And if you show 69%, it's not enough. It's a hard number. But the other side is from the landlord's perspective, that 50% that they're going to get back from the government was based on a cost. So it doesn't matter, you know, if your rent's $10,000 a month and $7,500 is their cost, they're only going to get back based on that $7,500, not the $10,000. So it's almost a double hit. And it's a tough call for landlords. Like, everybody's criticizing them, and I understand their point. They're the same as you, whether you're running a hair salon or a meat market or whatever you're running. But these people are running a business. They're landlords, and they're being asked to, you know, absorb 25% of the rent, and then they're only going to get a cost factor back. So they're getting hit twice. A lot of them simply can't afford to do it. It's not the point of whether they want to participate or not. They're finding it difficult themselves. They're an actual business. A lot of these places have mortgages and things against these properties of which they have to pay. They may be able to defer it, they may not, but the same as everybody else out there, you tenants, they are a business and they're leasing space back to you. So there is certainly a rationale as to why some of them certainly can't afford it or won't do it. And it's for the most part a business move. We know others that have reached out and said, for those that can show us the loss, we're absolutely here to help them. You know, we can afford to ride this out, but they say they can only afford to ride it out for a little bit of time also. So there is a rationale. It's not like, you know, the landlord's saying, you know, screw you guys, we're just, we're not going to participate, like this is our business. It's an actual direct hit to them, just like any other business. I don't know if anybody wanted to comment on that, or I guess I covered it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can't add to that. I think you're absolutely right. There's two parts to this.
Yeah. Okay. Next one up, will there be any kind of subsidy for the new PPE expense that is required when reopening?
So I heard this, I had in the conversations I've been having with dentists and with others, some of whom already had some inherent costs, but there's increased costs. Businesses are experiencing an increased cost to be safe, whether it be plexiglass or gloves or masks or gel or, you know, even sanitizing. I'm starting to see sanitizing units chained down. Like you used to have the chain down pen in a bank. You know, these are commodities and they're expensive. I'm not aware of any programs that are dealing with that. But I do want to acknowledge that it is more expensive to have all these pieces in place.
Paul?
Yeah, and additionally, in a lot of cases, tattoo salons or parlors, hair salons, you know, places that would normally have some of that PPE on hand, gave that up to hospitals and to other first responders willingly. Now, when they reopen, not only are they not able to use resources they would have had in stock, but now they've got additional costs. So we're hearing this a lot. It's not just you know, the occasional. It's almost every conversation about how expensive it is to do this reopening with no cash sitting in their banks. So yeah, it is something that needs to be looked at, and we're hoping that the government can help out.
Okay, everybody, we're getting a little tight on time, so I've got one more question we're going to go through. But for those of you whose questions we didn't get to, the chamber will do its best to get responses from the different levels here and get back to you directly on it, so you won't be left out in the dark there. This last one, Doug Downey, it's directed at you.
Okay.
You're probably the best one anyways, but it says, any chance the province will prevent business evictions for those businesses whose landlords are not participating? Hold on, my whole screen just left me.
Well, I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
So if they're not participating and you're facing eviction, is the province going to step in and put a moratorium on that?
Right.
And Rocco addressed that, saying some jurisdictions are doing that. What I can tell you is that we steal good ideas from other places, and so we certainly were all monitoring each other. And so I'm aware of the BC situation, and again, at these tables, that's where we have the conversation. So conversations like that are happening. I don't want to hold out a lot of false hope that we're going to do anything in particular, but we're certainly aware of it, and we're watching the impact that's happening in other jurisdictions.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. All right, so to be respectful of everybody's time and to keep this on cue, we'll do closing comments, and we'll just go in the order of the screen here. So we'll start with Rocco.
My thanks to you, Todd, to all of the participants. As I said, I think the first time I joined one of the Barrie calls, we're in an unprecedented time. There is no playbook. When there is no playbook, the best thing that you can have is great players and great teamwork. And quite frankly, we in Canada, we in Ontario have been blessed. There's a whole bunch of them right here on that screen, all levels of government stepping up. It's not about party lines. This is truly Team Canada, because we need to stay together to get through this. And I'll leave you with the immortal words of Winston Churchill. When you're walking through hell, the only way to get through is to keep on walking. So stay positive, stay safe. The Chamber is there with you. And I know the Barrie Chamber with Todd and Paul are doing a remarkable job. So keep reaching out. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocco. Doug Downey.
Yeah, just thanks again. Just know that our offices are operating. I checked with my office this morning. They had 4,000 new emails. People are reaching out. Sometimes they're campaigns for things that are provincial, but bear with us in terms of getting back. But we do get back same day if you phone us. So there's a standard of service there, both for Andrea and I. And our websites have information, and they also have places you can buy PPE and there's all sorts of stuff there. So don't hesitate to reach out. And if there's any way that we can help, and if it's not us, we transfer over for me to the other Doug in the riding, or to Barrie or Jeff. So don't hesitate, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. And just touch on that really quick. Also at the Chamber, we released a list, Paul put it up a couple of weeks ago, of all local suppliers or manufacturers of PPE, so we can also do our best to shop local and give people a resource where they can actually access this stuff, because a lot of people are finding it difficult to find that. So up next, Doug Shipley.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks to the Chamber for putting this together. I always look forward to these. Just, I was going to reiterate, our office does remain open too, not for walk-ins, but please call or email, or you can set up an appointment too to see us. We are definitely here to help at any time. And I did see that someone sent in, it was either on the chat or the Q&A, that further to my discussion at the very beginning about having a little video done with themselves. They've done something innovative at their business. If they want to email our office directly, we'll make sure we get in contact with them and see if we can't put that together. So if someone has shown some interest in that, just please, we didn't get it answered here, but send that directly to our office and we'll reach out and see if we can't do that. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend, and look forward to the next one of these.
Hey, thanks, Doug. John Brassard.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Rocco, Paul, everyone for participating and being part of this morning. I think this is the 5th one that we've done since the crisis started effectively on March 13th. Just want to say that our office is open as well. We've got 5 staff either working in our Barrie, Ottawa offices or at home. We are being as diligent as we can in responding to the emails and the phone calls that we're getting. We're burning through our customer resource management program that we have. It's been really, really helpful. Actually, you know, funny enough, we just picked it up in January and trained all our staff on it, and then this hit, and it's been a really terrific tool for us to keep track of the concerns of individuals and businesses in the riding as well. I do want to touch on one thing, because I think Doug Downey brought it up earlier about the issue of childcare, or it might have been Rocco. Interestingly enough, on the call that we had last night with the Canadian Bankers Association, they saw this as, if not the top issue, close to the top issue, as we sort of get out of this crisis, because you know, obviously that work-home balance, and with schools being closed, daycares being closed, etc., it's really going to take a toll on workers in this country. And so they really emphasize the need for government to address this as a matter of policy. So really interesting that you had these top economists in the country, and one of the areas that they were specifically focused on was the issue of childcare. So I do want to say again, thank you. And if anybody needs our help, our website, johnbrassard.com, is updated on a daily basis. We're continuing to put out daily updates through our social media platforms at John Brassard CPC. And, you know, there's a lot of information out there. You can pick and choose what you need, but the most important thing is that you have factual information. And so having these helps in that, Todd. So thank you to you and Paul and Rocco again for having us. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, John. Barrie Ward.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me fill in today for Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Rocco, for joining us, and thank you to the Chamber for putting this together. It's been very illuminating, and as the others have mentioned, I wanted to remind people that the City Hall building is closed, but it doesn't mean City Hall is closed. They will answer the phones, and they will, all the functions are being carried out that are normally carried out. Thanks.
Great, and thanks again to all the panelists for your time. We at the Chamber, and certainly all our members and then the general audience out there, appreciate that. Paul was saying the other day that on average, these Zoom meetings are being replayed over 300 times. People are watching different businesses and sectors. We had a couple of leaders recently tell Paul and I that they either watch it live if they can, and if they can't, themselves along with their staff at some point during the week, review every single one of our Zoom videos so they can make sure that they're current and relevant as to what's going on. So again,
It's all the Doug Shipley fans.
Well, they want to see how our hair is growing every week, except Rocco's, of course. But they want to see how long our hair is getting. That's what they want, Todd.
Yes, yeah. All right. So again, we'd like to thank everybody that tuned in today. Again, thank you for all that you're doing in your businesses every single day. We urge every leader in our community to maintain the focus on slowing the pace and transmission of this COVID-19, whatever stage of operations your business may be currently in. Also, on behalf of the Chamber and the Sandbox, if you need anything, do not hesitate to reach out. We are here to help you. And two more real quick ones. As always, we implore you to shop local, buy local, whether it's a gift card, whether it's ordering from a restaurant, anything local is going to help ensure that those local businesses are going to thrive, and they're going to be here in the future when we need them. But right now, they need us. Also, as social distancing measures will be slowly lifted, please ensure that you continue to follow all requirements and take them seriously. These are not, this is not to be taken lightly. Even though the fear may be slowly wearing off as the summer months are coming and it's getting hotter out, we need to maintain our priority, and that is keeping the community safe and healthy, which is the responsibility of all of us collectively. And with that, I wish everybody a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.